years ago, I lit a cigarette, picked up a monkey skull to go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty, filling in for Russell Glasser. And joining me this week is Jeff D.
Hi, Matt.
How you doing?
Good. You?
I'm doing all right. It's a happy Sunday, July 31st, 2005. We are a live call-in program, and we'll have the number up for you very soon, but we've got some of our regular announcements to get out of the way. The Atheist Experience is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can reach our website at www.atheist-community.org. And we have weekly meetings every Sunday at Crescent City Beignets, which is on 6th Street, just a few blocks west of Lamar. That's every Sunday at 11:30, except for the third Sunday of the month, where we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at 9th and Guadalupe. You do not have to be a member to attend. Any atheist or atheist-friendly people are more than welcome to come down and meet us, get to know the people, and see what's going on, and just have yourself some beignets or whatever. And we host a number of other social events throughout the week. On Mondays we have Godless Gamers at the home of Russell Glasser. Information about that is available on the members portion of the website. And on Thursdays we have Atheist Happy Hour at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is located near the corner of 183 and I-35, just south of 183 on the access road. In addition to the Atheist Experience, we also, the ACA also sponsors a radio program, The Nonprofits, which is hosted by Jeff D. and co-hosted by Dennis Loubet, and Russell Glasser and myself are also involved in that.
And that's one of their internet radio shows.
Yeah.
So you can't get it on your radio. You can only get it on your computer.
freethoughtradio.com, Saturdays at 2 o'clock. It's live every other week, but it is broadcast every single week. And it's 90 minutes of discussion about all kinds of topics that affect our world. And one of the things that we've been doing after the show is the cast and crew get together for dinner, and we invite those members of our viewing audience who are atheist or atheist-friendly to come down and join us. Right now we're going to Shanghai River Restaurant, which is 2700 West Lamar, or West Anderson, not Lamar, sorry. It's by the Alamo Draft House 4. And we normally finish up, the show's off the air at 6 o'clock, and after a little bit of cleanup, we head out and head on down to the Shanghai River for dinner. So you're all more than welcome to join us. If your intent is to come down and preach to us, or try and convert us, or tell us why we're wrong and you're right, there's no need to go all the way down there for that, because we're trying to eat then, and would appreciate that you didn't. But call into the show, because that's what the show's for. You can call in and accuse us of whatever you feel like, and state your case, and tell us why you're right and we're wrong, or I don't know, whatever happens to be on your mind. We can go ahead and put the telephone number up, and we'll be ready to take some calls. Do you have any news items at all that you wanted to?
It's been a really slow news week for state church separation issues, but there's been a bunch of science that happened, I understand.
There were some really good science stories that I found this week. The earliest dinosaur embryos ever discovered have now been removed. The egg was actually discovered about 20 years ago, but it took them a while to develop the tools so that they could safely get inside the egg to the actual embryo. And what they found was the embryo of a dinosaur that's identified as Massus ponodilus.
So they didn't let this embryo come to term then?
No.
No?
It was, however...
Are the anti-abortion people up in arms?
Well, they think all this is fake anyway.
No.
See, the embryo actually filled the egg entirely. So the presumption then is that it was close to actually hatching. One of the things that was important was that it didn't have any teeth. And this particular dinosaur does have teeth. So not only is this 190 million year old dinosaur egg important just because it's the oldest embryo, but it may well be the earliest example we have of parental care. Because if you have a creature that has to develop teeth and is born without those teeth, then it requires parental care in order to survive. The Massus ponodilus, a creature that grew to 5 meters in length, is also one of the few dinosaurs for which we have a really good fossil record for. Now beginning at an embryonic stage all the way up through adulthood, we have a fairly good sample of the stages of its life.
Did they say in that article why this is the case? I mean, did they live in some area where the conditions were very conducive to fossil formation or something? Because it's actually quite hard. It's quite rare for a fossil to form.
Right. It's the conditions that you need to actually get a fossil. It's amazing that we have as many as we have and the good records that we have. Now, this one was during it was near the beginning of the Jurassic period, whereas most dinosaur embryos we have are from the Cretaceous, which is about 100 million years later. For those of you who are young Earth creationists, you can convert those numbers of 100 million years and 190 million years into 35,000 young Earths or 32,000 young Earths, somewhere in that neighborhood, and you can figure out exactly how it happened. It's pretty important. It's pretty cool. It's nice to get fossils because, like we mentioned, it's we're lucky to have any really good fossils. Yeah. So to have a dinosaur embryo there was nifty. Cool. There's a couple other bits of science news. One that I find really important, so we'll kind of go on to it because stem cell research has been a hot topic all over the place, and final results of a study conducted at Johns Hopkins showed that stem cell therapy can be used effectively to treat heart attacks or myocardial infarction in pigs.
These would be pig stem cells.
Yes, they're using pig stem cells on pigs, not human stem cells.
Okay, I thought that's how it worked.
Well, we got to start somewhere. But in 2 months' time, stem cells harvested from another pig's bone marrow and injected in the animal's damaged heart restored heart function and repaired damaged heart muscle by 50 to 75%.
Wow.
Yeah. The study was so successful that they're actually going to be beginning human trials very soon. And while I don't believe he specifically addressed these specific results, you got to think that this announcement coming recently had to have some bearing on why Senator Bill Frist has decided to cut ties with the Bush camp's position on stem cell research.
You're asking me to conclude that Bill Frist is driven by, facts, and I'm not quite prepared to accept that.
Well, he's a cardiologist.
Yeah.
He's a doctor.
So, and he diagnosed Terry Schiavo on TV. So,
I realize that
I'm not quite prepared to cut that man slack.
I'm not ready to let him out of the doghouse, but I'll throw him a bone.
All right, fair enough.
He's reversed his position. He's decided,
that lot of good it's going to do. Bush has already said he's going to veto it if it passes anyway.
Well, I'm of the opinion that this is one of those things where if he vetoes it, it's going to get overridden anyway. There's just there's too much benefit and too much good, and too many people who are putting pressure on this. This is, we're talking about fighting a relatively small minority opinion it's about education because people don't understand, how important this is and why this isn't in any way murder. But he came out saying that he was going to actually be supporting stem cell research. And the president, of course, gave him a thumbs up, telling him he had to vote his conscience. We got more new stuff we can get back to in a minute.
No comment.
But we do have a caller on the line ready to go, and so I guess we'll get started here with Brian. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
How are the both of you?
We're fine,
I'm
Brian.
Pretty good.
How are you?
Pretty great. I was just going to ask, why did you choose to be an atheist? What brought that about?
Go ahead, Matt. You go first.
I don't necessarily believe that it was anything resembling what some people would call a choice. I was a Christian for 20 some odd years, to varying degrees. In my youth, I was relatively serious about it and had considered seminary. Then for a period of time, I was in the Navy and didn't attend church as often. And when I got out of the Navy, I decided that I was going to, reaffirm my faith and possibly, set myself up to go back to seminary again because I had always been a believer. And over the course of several years of reading and studying, not just the works of Christians, but also believing that it was required to defend the faith, I had to look at the arguments of people who were opposed to Christianity or opposed to religion, or arguments for and against the existence of God, and consider them all. And at some point, after a couple years of research, it just was, like I said, it wasn't even really a choice. The only position that seemed valid, that my mind would accept, was that there was insufficient evidence for the belief in a God, and there was sufficient evidence to discount a lot of claims about God. And that, at some point, I just started acknowledging that I was an atheist.
Are you spiritual in any way?
Well, you'd have to define what you mean by that. I don't believe that there's a soul. I don't believe in supernatural, anything supernatural that I've been, familiar with. People claims of astral projection and psychic phenomenon and talking to the dead and things like that. So, no. So on that sense, if you have some other definition of spirituality, I guess maybe I'd have to know what you meant.
Do you believe in rocks and trees and mountains and stuff?
Sure.
Can I have the other guy's story?
That you can as soon as I get on camera. Hi. Do we believe in rocks and trees and stuff? Yeah, sure. Duh. I mean, we see those all day long, huh?
Why did you choose to be an atheist?
Well, I chose to be an atheist because I care what's actually true. And I also was raised a Christian, and what made it possible for me to become an atheist was actually my Christian upbringing, which told me that God is a loving God who wants the best for us, and isn't some big mean tyrant that has arbitrary arcane rules that he's going to punish us for breaking, right? I was raised to believe God is a nice guy, that he understands our needs and our desires and so on, and while he has rules, he's also reasonable. And so when I had questions, for a long time, it was very difficult for me to actually think through the questions that I had. I was afraid of offending God. The day that I realized that the God I was raised to believe in would not punish me for using my brain, and wouldn't have a problem if I had questions and wanted to think about them. The 5 minutes after I realized that's the kind of God I was raised to believe in, I realized there was no such guy, because I started using my brain. I felt free to do that, and looking honestly at the evidence on both sides, it was just clear that Christianity, like all religions that I know of, is made up nonsense.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling. Yeah, the question of,
that guy would better calm down. He's a madman.
The question, atheism in general is simply a singular answer to one question with regard to the existence of a god or gods. It doesn't mean that you can't be religious or supernatural. As a matter of fact, Buddhists are mostly atheist.
Yeah, they believe a bunch of other stuff.
And there's a bunch of people who would consider themselves atheists yet have beliefs based on completely unproven things which I would consider silly, like the aliens.
Rocks and trees, though. What was that about?
I don't. I think he was maybe wanting to get to a position of, how do you know what you know? How do you evaluate truth or reality? Or
I don't know where he was coming from. That was weird.
It's kind of beyond, but I had been having a conversation with somebody who watched the show, and I was answering the phones one day, and she asked a question, and she seemed rather baffled that anybody who could have been a Christian for 20 some odd years could ever leave the faith, and it just, what reasons did you have? And so we began an email conversation where I laid out, pretty specifically, and like a lot of people, she seemed a little defensive because it's hard to explain what your problems are with, let's take Christianity for example, without saying something negative about it. And she, of course, perceives that as an attack. Well, okay, in all honesty, it probably is an attack. It's not. Well, it's not me intentionally being disrespectful.
In the sense that if you don't agree with a position and you explain why, you are of necessity. You are explaining what's wrong with that position.
Right.
But there's a difference between honestly talking about what our reasons are and just out of spite saying mean things. It's not that's not the same.
Yeah, there's, and without trying to be overly mean or tried, it's kind of what they end up doing, I think, and when I say they, I'm referring to some extremist right-wing conservatives. You can talk about whatever issue you want, and every issue is pretty much open to debate and opinion until you get on religion. And now you've suddenly crossed a line where you can't say anything negative about it. And so if I say something negative about Christianity, and it's not just me being mean and making a statement, if I'm actually analyzing it and offering a reason for why I think something's wrong, that's completely different from me just calling Christians names or, and oddly enough,
but there's this very pervasive attitude in our culture that religion deserves special treatment.
Yeah.
That religious views are just such wonderful, delicate, crystalline, wonderful things, such beautiful works of art. It's sort of the way that people treat them.
Right.
That you mustn't do anything that might threaten that carefully erected structure. Well, if that carefully erected structure is a house of cards, and people are going around saying, "Oh, it's not a house of cards; it's a concrete skyscraper," to expect us to not point that out, I'm always reminded of old fables like the Emperor's New Clothes.
Right.
Should that kid in the story of the Emperor's New Clothes have kept his mouth shut when the Emperor's walking down the street naked just because speaking up was going to embarrass him, or is the situation where the people of the city are going along with this farce of the king pretending he's got clothes on, something that really needs to be have its silliness pointed out.
Yeah,
that's how we feel. We think we're making a contribution when we talk about what's clearly and obviously kind of silly about things that all too many people take seriously.
Well, not only is this notion of you can't speak negatively about my religion or say anything bad about it, I not only disagree with that, I think the exact opposite is true, and that is you're entitled to have whatever silly belief you want, but the minute you turn it into a religion, that's when it actually becomes necessary, in my opinion, to point out what's wrong with it. John Doe sitting around the house can believe whatever silly thing he wants, but as soon as John gets a bunch of friends and turns that silly belief into a religion, which begins to dictate what people of that religion and other religions or no religions can and can't do, when they begin to mass together to kind of push their views upon other people, now that's when I think you're required by whatever duty you feel to your fellow man to actually stand up and say, no, this is a dumb idea. This is something you've got a silly idea, and here's why. But
yeah.
All right, we can go on another caller. We got Paula. How you doing?
I'm fine. I've got a question. Since both of you were raised in the Christian faith, and I assume, I think you said you were a Christian for 20-something years?
Yeah, I was raised primarily Southern Baptist, but we went to a lot of different churches, wherever my parents felt was the best church at the time. Okay.
And then you all both chose to, turn your backs on the teaching and go another way. So my question to you is, when you face, trouble or grief or, something really negative, how do you handle that? Do you ever fall back and call upon God?
Why would I call upon somebody I don't believe in? No, I don't. When I'm in trouble, I look to myself, friends, anybody who's got good advice, something real, something that's actually going to be helpful, rather than something I don't believe in anymore. I understand what you're saying, and I understand why you might be having difficulty grasping the concept, but I'm never tempted to cry out to something that I don't believe in, no matter how bad the situation gets, because I recognize right off the bat that it's not going to help at all. I mean, we continually, they've tested the efficacy of prayer for one thing, and this isn't. You mentioned, turning your back on the faith. This wasn't a rejection of something we considered real. This was an accepting that something which we had previously accepted as real is not real.
Well, another question, a quick question I've got. I heard you say in the first call that you didn't believe like any kind of supernatural things. How do you explain things that other people claim to see, like ghosts or prophetic dreams and things like that? How do you explain that?
Well, I think, the two are very different, whether or not somebody has seen a ghost or whether somebody has a prophetic dream. There's lots of explanations, and sometimes you don't have an explanation. And the point is that it's okay not to have the answer. I mean, it's the search for answers that, drives us. Just because I don't have an answer doesn't mean I have to automatically assume that, well, God did it, or if something eerie happened to happen, or I had a sensation, that doesn't mean it's a ghost. If the lights flicker, well, maybe the power's, there's a problem in the circuit box, or any number of other things. To leap right to a ghost, I think mostly those things are best explained by the way the mind normally functions. Because our minds are incredibly powerful. We know that hallucinations can occur, seeing things that aren't real. So part of it is the power of the mind, and part of it is simple misunderstandings or ignorance about possible scientific explanations.
Yeah, in fact, can I chime in here for a minute? Research into supernatural things has been going on as long as modern science, and longer, in fact, because people were actually dabbling with that stuff before there were clear, rational ways of testing it. And we're talking in excess of 200 years, and in all that time, there's just no evidence that these things actually happen. What we really have evidence of is that there are people who will not give up the idea. That for sure we've got. But a friend of mine showed me an email exchange that he was having with a believer in psychic phenomena, and said, if you believe in psychic phenomena, then tell me what my ATM machine PIN number is. And the guy got all huffy and said, well, I didn't say I had psychic powers. I said that psychic powers really exist. And my friend responds, well, then you really ought to call up your bank and inform them that their carefully laid out security policy protecting your money is completely full of holes, because we have people walking around who can magically pull these numbers out of thin air or by reading people's minds. The fact is, our world is set up in such a way that it operates as if there were no such powers. And there's never examples of people, you don't get a guy winning the lottery who has a 20-year career, history of successfully making psychic claims, right? There's no evidence that anybody is getting any kind of real benefit by using any of these powers that folks keep insisting exist. So I think the real answer here is we have people who won't let it go. There's absolutely no reason to believe in it in the first place.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay.
If you, there's lots of things you can believe in, and most of the time what we find out is that, it's a lot of it is based on simple ignorance, and I don't mean to go around being mean to people and saying they're dumb, but if you don't have a good understanding of science and the world around you and what we know, you're already starting at it with a handicap when you're trying to evaluate something that happens.
And not even, I mean, science is a scary word. Just simple grasp of, how to think properly. James Randi is a guy. Do we have his?
Yeah, they had that up a minute ago.
Did you put up the number? James Randi is a guy who's got $1 million for anyone who can prove that they have a psychic power, and he's had that $1 million waving around there for several years now, and interestingly, none of these big name so-called psychic celebrities, your John Edwards talking to the dead guys, your Van Proggs, none of those guys has come along to collect the $1 million. Then none of them have even ever contacted him saying, well, I'd like to be tested because I think I can take your $1 million away from you.
Sylvia Brown agreed to.
Sylvia Brown agreed on TV, but then never actually followed up. So now, you say this to somebody who believes in these things, and you get nothing but excuses. Oh, James Randi is going to make the tests unfair. No, actually, the way it works is that James Randi sits down with the person to be tested, asks them straight out, what is it that you can do, and what success rate do you claim? He dutifully writes that down, and then sets up a test that they ought to be able to pass if they can do what they say they can do. And the person being tested gets to see the nature of that test, how it's set up, and they have to agree to it before the test occurs. And what happens almost universally is some guy will come along and say, I can do dowsing. I can find, take a silver dollar and hide it in one of 6 identical buckets where I can't see where it is, and I can pick which bucket it's under 100% of the time, every time. And he tests them and finds that they don't get it right any more than 1 in 6 times, which is what you'd expect from chance, and they immediately respond, oh, well, I forgot to tell you that since today's Thursday, my psychic powers don't work as well on Thursdays. It's
amazing.
It's not James Randi that's cheating. It's these people who make their claim, and then when they can't live up to it, they try to make excuses.
Yeah, and the excuses are not just, somebody's sabotaged them, but just having skeptics in the room is enough negative energy to prevent them from doing what they're doing. Or, well, it was a bad karma day and I just, wasn't feeling whatever kind of New Age crap they want to add on there.
Right.
There's $1 million out there, and if you think you have any type of paranormal experience or power. I mean, it's not just can you dowse or anything else. You can apply for this challenge and work out a testable scenario and try for it. And one of the guys that I've been speaking to in email has begun to actually look at that because he believes in a self-healing yogic force, which he's been experimenting with for the last 27 years. Unfortunately, not everybody feels it, and not everybody feels it the same, and dabbling with this yogic force can lead to paranoia, dementia, and insanity. And he's been doing it for 27 years, but he's fine. So it's just one big, ad hoc excuse after another.
What really galls me about people who believe in this sort of thing is you get attitude off of them as if they have this impression of themselves that they are the ones in touch with their feelings. They are the ones with imagination. They are the ones who are able to, visualize things, who are able to hope for grander things. Well, I think that continuing to believe in psychic powers in the face of the utter absence of any clear evidence that they exist is a huge failure of the imagination. Because I can imagine what the world would be like if we had people walking around who were really able to do these things. I know how the world would be different. There are whole industries that we have now that wouldn't exist, or like the bank example, would operate very, very differently. You know, big bank chains do not employ like counter psychics to throw out interference to hide their customers' PIN numbers.
Maybe they're hiring skeptics. And
why not? The world would be such a different place, and yet these folks believe in it anyway. They're not. I think that the people who believe these things are simply not able to imagine. They're not able to follow their own beliefs through to their logical conclusion, right?
Yeah.
And see what the world would be like if the things they believed in were true.
You should take a look at some of the discussions I've had with this particular gentleman, because you summed him up to a T, never having read anything he's written. He tried to make an argument. We had discussed logic and critical thinking and reasoning and how you go about determining how credible a claim is. You know, one of the factors that you're going to consider is who is the claimant, how reliable is that. You know, if my best friend tells me he just bought a new car, isn't that a more reliable claim than somebody who I suspect to be a habitual liar telling me that they just bought a new car? Doesn't necessarily determine which claim is true.
No,
if
because
either.
But George Bush has got his best friend.
Yeah, it's
that doesn't prove anything.
It moves toward that. And the other things that you need to consider when evaluating the claim is, how does this claim affect things I already know, things that we know and accept about reality, and what other claims would I have to accept in order to remain consistent in my standards of evidence in evaluating this claim? You know, if you tell me you've got a pet dragon and I just believe you, well, now all of a sudden I've just got to start believing any crazy claim that comes along if I'm going to remain consistent. So you have to have higher standards of evidence for that, for some things. You know, if you tell me that it's raining, yeah, I could walk outside and check myself, look at a rain gauge, look at a weather report, any number of things. But if you tell me it's raining, that's not really a big deal. You know,
right.
I know that it does rain. I've experienced it before. If you
tell me it's
truthful,
raining diamonds,
yeah,
I'm going to want to see the diamonds.
Definitely.
I just am. And I don't think that's unfair.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a failure of my imagination to say that I am skeptical of claims of raining diamonds. I think it's a failure of imagination on the part of the person making the claim, who it never occurred to them how wildly different the world would be if stuff like that happened.
Yeah, not all claims are equal, and that's something that, boy, finding that dividing line is not always the easiest thing. Let's go on to Angela. How you doing?
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good.
We're good, thanks.
Okay, going back about a couple minutes, how y'all said that you grew up with primarily other religions, your family. Mm-hmm. How did they accept that when you told them that you change what you believe? Not change, but realize.
No, that's fair enough.
It is a change in what we believe. You want to?
In my case, I was working up the nerve to tell my parents, who, by the way, are both ministers. They weren't when I was growing up. They became ministers after I was out of the house, living on my own. But still, ministers. I was working up the nerve to tell them, because what was bothering me was the dishonesty that I was exhibiting in not telling them. Every time they'd call and say, how are you doing? What church are you going to? And I would hem and haw. I felt horrible that I was not playing straight with my own parents. So I was working up the nerve, but Mom stumbled across something on my website which I thought was beyond her technical capabilities before I was quite ready. And so it was a little awkward. The worst part of it has been, there's a lot of, I don't know what your background is, ma'am, but a lot of Christians are of the type who believe that if you don't believe in God or Jesus or whomever, then you're going to burn forever in hell. Luckily, my parents are not those kinds of believers. Mm-hmm. My parents have not come to me and said, no, you've got to come back on board because we don't want you to burn in hell. So on the one hand, it's not that kind of cruel threat trying to get me back in, which I think would lose me a lot of respect of my folks. Instead, it's actually a more selfish thing, I think, from my mom, who's come at me with this guilt trip of, how can you say that when I die, this is my mom talking, how can you say when I die I'm not going to be with your grandma and all of our loved ones? As if I've made this decision to hurt her, or as if belief in such things by others ever required my participation. She can believe whatever she wants. So that has been awkward. Also, for a while, and still every once in a while, but for a while she was using every holiday opportunity to make little hints, often in the form of, like, say, gifts that were of a religious nature. And I've at one point I said, okay, let's try it this way, Mom. I'll accept the crazy book on God's existence in the universe that you sent me, and I'll even read the thing. You got to read this book by Dan Barker called Losing Faith in Faith. He's a former minister who himself became an atheist, and his book talks about that. I read the book she sent me. She read a couple of chapters, decided she didn't like it, and stopped reading it. So it's been a little unfair, and I had her agree at one point not to send me any more religious paraphernalia, and she stopped for a while, but she started up again. So it's that kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is all the trouble is coming from my mom primarily. My dad doesn't want to talk about it, but my mom trying to either entice me with gifts or hit me with guilt trips or things like that to try to get me to come back into the fold, which is unfortunate because I love my parents and I don't want this difficulty between us, but there it is.
Yeah, well, I grew up being a Catholic, and not only recently, but my whole life. My dad's a lawyer, and he's a real, take a look at things. He grew up being Catholic too, but I guess over the years, taking a look at it, kind of makes you grow on it, and he's not. I mean, he'll go to church. I mean, he'll tolerate it, but he won't push it. I'll try to tell them how I feel, but it's.
So you're an unbeliever, like us?
Well, yeah, okay. I guess you could say.
Insert whatever term that you want for that. Some people prefer agnostic. Some people prefer free thinker. There's a lot of different words that basically amount to the same thing.
I guess it just sounds almost bad, like the names that they give to people who, like.
You're talking about how the term atheist has such negative connotations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it just sounds.
That's just the way things work when people try to vilify somebody who doesn't believe what they believe.
Yeah, and it's to be expected since we're living in a culture that is dominated by believers who do apparently feel threatened by the mere existence of others who don't agree with them. And so when dictionaries get written, odds are they get written by Christians. Or whoever the dominant religion is, whatever country that dictionary was written in. You know what I mean? So it's not that much of a surprise that the words for us get these negative definitions applied to them and get used to mean bad things.
It's one of the reasons why we do what we do with this show is to try and take some of the stigma out of a term. Whatever term you might want to choose to apply to yourself, unbeliever, agnostic, atheist, and agnosticism and atheism aren't mutually exclusive terms. They refer to different things. But what you choose, if you are one of the people who don't believe in a God, you're not you're one of us, or to some extent. We are more activist, obviously, and one of the things we're trying to do is remove some of the stigma from that term and be able to state as clearly as possible why we believe what we believe and why we don't believe what some other people believe.
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Sure.
And good luck.
And if you'd like to join us down in Shanghai River, or if any of our viewers who are atheist or atheist-friendly people want to join us for dinner after the show, we'll be down there somewhere between 6:30 and 6:45. The address on your screen now.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
You too.
Yeah, I actually I didn't get to answer her question about how you handle being a black sheep. And in a nutshell, my brother is perfectly aware of my atheism and what I do with regard to activism. My parents, who I thought were completely unaware, it turns out recognize that I'm not religious and have suspicions that I may be an atheist, but they don't want to talk about it with me, and which is fine because I really don't want to talk about it with them right now. There needs to be a kind of a distancing period where you get more comfortable with the concept, especially, like with my parents who are extremely religious. My dad's a deacon. My mom's been involved in fundamentalist Christian activities for as long as I can remember, and I was too. And if there needs to be kind of a warming up period where everybody comes to grips with what we're actually talking about, that's fine.
Yeah, but everybody's situation is completely different. I've heard a lot of different stories of things going a lot of different ways. I mentioned Dan Barker, who wrote that book, Losing Faith in Faith. He reports that now this is a guy who grew up Christian, went into the ministry, was a preacher for a while, was it 10, 20 years? I forget how long. When he revealed his atheism to his parents, which, he decided that this was such a big deal, and he was so concerned about leaving anybody with a false impression that he wrote a great big long letter and sent it to everybody he knew, which isn't what I would recommend.
Well, he'd been producing Christian music that was distributed. I mean, I remember, I think, and this could be a faulty memory, I've contacted Dan to ask him about it, but I think our youth group at church actually did one of the musicals that he wrote.
Yeah.
And he had so much integrity that he felt it was important to contact those people and say, hey, I'm no longer one of you.
I'm not saying it's not integrity. I'm saying scary. Scary. I wouldn't do that. But he reports that when his parents found out about his atheism, they were shocked at first, then thought about it a while, and very quickly abandoned their religious beliefs and said, son, you're right. This is all completely silly. That's probably not going to happen for most people out there, but I just mentioned that as an example of the huge range of possible things that can occur. My only advice for somebody who's thinking about maybe letting their parents know that they don't believe anymore is be very cautious. And you decide what's best for your situation.
Yeah, one of the reasons, and I was in a similar position, Jeff, and to some degree I still am. It bugs me that I can't be honest and forthcoming with my parents right now. But I also have legitimate concerns about my mom's health. This is something that she takes very, very seriously. And, it's not like she's infirm or dying or anything, but this is the type of thing that's going to potentially ruin the rest of her life. I don't feel that she's in a position where she would ever agree with me or understand it. And so telling her would then lead her to live the rest of her life in sadness in the belief that one of her sons is going directly to hell. That's a tough call to make. Whether for my own comfort of being completely honest, I'm willing to hurt someone that badly. It's not a black and white issue, as well, oddly enough, are any moral issues, no matter who's telling you that there are moral absolutes. It's a tough call. And we got other callers on the line. Line 3, we got Bill. Hey, Bill.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Bill.
Well, I just want to first of all commend you guys to have the courage to, come on TV. I know we live in a Christian nation, so it's good that you guys are...
You mean we live in a nation full of Christians?
My biggest question, though, is, let's say, what happens when you die, if there really is a God?
Well, I hope it's the really laid-back, easygoing one that I was raised to believe in when I did believe. I hope it's that one, because if it's one of these great, big, mean tyrant gods, he'll probably squash me like a bug, and there's nothing I'll be able to do about it.
Don't you think it's better if you, hedge your bets, play it safe and just believe in a God?
No.
No, I don't see
No,
that
I
as
don't
hedging
agree with that at
bets.
all. That's called Pascal's wager. There's actually a official formulated argument.
I actually became a Christian after I was molested by an atheist when I was young. That's
It's
how
one
I
of those
found
kind of calls. Can we lose this guy?
Ball digger.
Yeah, let's lose this guy. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, Pascal's
See what I
wager.
said? It's a failure of the imagination.
Pascal's wager, which I'm sure each of us has heard and answered hundreds of times now, is the idea that if there is a God and you choose not to believe in him, then you're risking eternal damnation. Whereas if you just go ahead and believe in him, you're essentially hedging your bets and assuring your salvation. And it's false on so many levels. First of all, which God? Which God, which hell, which beliefs?
Right.
It's
Suppose
not,
the real God is Zeus.
Yeah.
And he'll fry you with lightning bolts if you don't believe. So just that already the argument falls apart there because it doesn't tell you which of these various threatening authoritarian deities is the one you need to be so afraid of that you should believe in him just to hedge your bets.
If you believe Pascal's wager is valid, and you're, let's say, a Christian, and you've been thinking it in terms of Christianity, explain how Pascal's wager doesn't work for Hinduism, Taoism, Muslim, pick another religion, and demonstrate that Pascal's wager isn't equally effective for that religion, because it is. And that's one of the big problems. You're hedging your bets, but you're not. You haven't determined which God is correct. And do you really think if there was a God up there that you could fool him by, just kind of trying to hedge your bets? I mean, that to me always seemed kind of absurd.
It works. It makes more sense if you are afraid that there's a great big mean dumb God that you can trick. Then it makes more sense. Another thing about Pascal's wager is that another part of the argument is that it doesn't cost you anything. Belief doesn't cost you anything, right? You just say, yeah, okay, I believe, and you go through the motions, and somehow you trick the God into letting you into Happy Land when you die. But in my case, I like to play role-playing games. Those are things that have been condemned by various religious groups. I like to look at pictures of naked people sometimes. I enjoy pornography a little bit. That's something that religion is against. I enjoy reading comic books. Those have been condemned by various religious groups. So to say that there's nothing you'd have to give up is just not true. Religions are all about taking certain things that people like a lot and demonizing them and saying, well, you mustn't do that because that's tempting you away from devoting all of your attention to the God. So it fails on many levels.
Yeah,
Did I just admit that I enjoy pornography? Sure, why not? It's not illegal.
I think there's far too much emphasis placed on issues which are primarily privacy issues. If two consenting adults want to do something, even if it means looking at pictures of two other consenting adults.
Sure. Hey, gay marriage.
Okay.
Canada has legalized gay marriage. That's another thing that if you're a homosexual, which I'm not, but if you the viewer are, that's a thing. Your entire lifestyle is a thing. Your entire sexual orientation, is a thing that you'd have to either give up or at the very least hide in order to participate in quite a large percentage of the available religions. Right? Now, of course, not every religion is against all of these things or to the same extent. But my point is that Pascal's wager pretends that you don't have to give anything up, and that's just not true.
It's about as bad a bet as you can make, I think. Molly, you're up next. How you doing?
Doing good. I have a question.
Yeah?
Have you gentlemen seen a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know?
Haven't seen it, no.
No, I haven't actually watched it.
I've heard of it, but only a very little. Inform us.
Okay, it seems like I have a belief because I asked for some signs and I got them, and I'm not going to get into what they were because I was not hallucinating or anything. So, that's my own thing. A belief is a matter of faith, and if it makes people feel good, that's fine. If they have whatever that belief is, but the atheist belief seems to be founded on the fact that it hasn't been proven scientifically that there is a God. Now, in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, which is quantum physics, and I wish I could quote who these people are because they are very famous, there are some of these scientists who do believe there is a God, based upon their investigation. So, the atheist faith appears to me to be based on the fact that you don't believe because it hasn't been proven, but it hasn't not been proven either.
Okay. Couple things. It's not a faith.
Well,
you can have belief.
Whatever. What do you call it? Belief?
We have there are so many things we want to say in response to just the few short sentences that you just uttered. But we got to start somewhere. Do you want to start with that one?
Let me get that out of the way first.
Okay.
You can have a belief based on faith, or belief based on evidence. A belief based on evaluation.
That's what I'm saying.
Those are different things. You still can have a belief.
Right. Your belief is based on lack of evidence.
Okay, now we got to get to the weight of the burden of proof. You ever heard of the phrase the burden of proof?
Yeah, no, I'm not questioning that your faith is based on lack of evidence. I am just saying that there is no evidence at this time, but that doesn't mean there never will be.
First of all, it's not a faith. Okay.
Your belief. What do you do? What do you call it? A belief? Mindset?
Yeah, but see, there's unfortunately there are a relatively small number of words in English that are at all applicable, and none of them really fit perfectly. The point is, when you say it's a faith, right, the primary characteristic of faith is believing even though there isn't any evidence.
Okay.
That is what faith is.
I understand all of that.
And we believe, atheists are people who believe things, or let's just say skeptics. Skeptics are people who believe stuff when there is evidence.
That's what I'm saying.
And refrain from belief until there is.
Okay.
That's
what I'm saying.
Now, the burden of proof. The burden of proof, when there's any claim of anything, the burden of proof lies on the person who's making the claim. So, for example, when somebody says there's a God, they have the burden of proof. It is their responsibility to prove that there is. This is a basic principle of critical thinking. Okay?
Right, okay.
Now, the reason why...
Can I interrupt you for a minute?
Let me finish the thought. The reason why the burden of proof is on the person who claims that they know that a thing exists is because in order for them to know that that thing exists, they're supposed to have evidence that that thing exists, which makes them the person in the position to provide the proof, right? They are the ones with access to the evidence.
Right.
Okay, so when you come to skeptics and say, well, you haven't proved it doesn't exist, you're off the rails, rationally speaking.
Why?
Because the burden of proof is not on atheists to prove, or skeptics to prove that anything isn't true. The burden of proof is always on the people claiming to know that the thing, whatever the thing is true. That's their job. If they can't prove that it's true, nobody is under any obligation to believe them.
Right.
This is basic, critical thinking, basic rational thought.
Well, first of all, I would suggest you go see What the Bleep Do We Know. That was
there's more about that, but go ahead and finish your point.
But I understand what you're saying, but it hasn't been proven it doesn't exist. We used to think
it doesn't matter. You went right back. You went right back to exactly what he just mentioned. Do I have to prove that leprechauns don't exist before it's okay not to believe in them?
No.
Okay, then why do you change that for other things, supernatural things? I mean, how is the claim of God?
Let's say the burden of proof on whoever individual scientist, whatever happened, that there was actually proof.
That
didn't happen now. It happened maybe 100 years from now.
Get back to me in 100 years.
Proof.
The smartest thing to do always is play the odds. Always. If the evidence is not there now, then there's no good reason to believe the thing now, right?
I'm not.
This entire argument. Yes, ma'am.
According to the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, some very well-respected scientists who are quantum physics scientists of renowned.
Who you can't name. whom you can't name.
That's all right. They're in there.
But they're there. I mean, go see the movie. You'll see them.
Okay,
Some of them
and
do believe, some of them don't believe. That is, I guess, up to each individual. But what I am saying is some of them do have a belief based upon scientific study that they have done. Now, whether that's something that's the burden of proof lies on that guy or this guy.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that's not true. No matter what was said in that movie, there is no scientific proof of the existence of, say, a God.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking you is, what if 100 years from now?
Then we change our minds.
10 years from now.
If 100 years from now the evidence...
There is scientific proof. Then what does your
then we change our minds,
the position changes.
That's all I'm saying.
How is that a problem for you?
You think the world was flat.
The problem is...
Yes, they did.
And then there was a proof that the world was round.
That's right.
But all
the people that thought it was flat and died,
but you know, ma'am, smugly going ahead and believing a thing before the evidence is there to prove that it is true doesn't put you in some kind of higher moral position than those who refrain from belief. In fact, you're out on a limb if you decide to go ahead and believe stuff before the evidence is there, right? Because in 100 years from now, 10,000 years from now, there might still not be evidence. That does not provide justification for continuing to believe this thing.
Just because there might someday be evidence doesn't mean you go leaping around saying, "Look, it might show up."
Always
I'm not questioning you guys can believe what you want to believe. Hey, it's cool with me. I think that people should believe what they want to believe.
I would prefer that as many people as possible actually believe the truth.
Yeah.
And with regard to that specific movie, you might want to do a bit more research, because there's an element to that movie where it is actually an advertisement for...
you hadn't seen it.
I said I haven't seen it. I'm still saying I haven't seen it. That doesn't mean I haven't researched it.
Oh, well, researching it and seeing it, I think, are probably two different things.
Yeah, researching it gets you evidence that's not included in the movie, whereas seeing it, you just get spoon-fed whatever it is that they wanted to spoon-fed.
I am not questioning what you guys
The fact of the matter is that one of the primary people in the movie is a woman who claims to be channeling an Amazon warrior.
Ramka does not believe in, I don't know what Ramka believes in. She channels Ramka, who is a warrior. I am not talking about her at all.
That's the thing, is the entire purpose of the movie. Take a look at who made it and why, and what arguments are being made. This is, on some levels at least, a recruiting film for that type of cult, to get people in a certain mindset. I'm not saying that everything about the movie is false, or let's toss everything out.
We had people that were scientists in there that were quantum.
Yeah, and scientists are never wrong, are they?
Here's another important...
Hey, everybody's wrong sometimes.
Here's another...
If we thought the world was flat today, I guess people would be falling off the edge of the world. And some people have died thinking that the world is flat, and that's what their belief was. And that's fine. Or what they accepted is true because they didn't have any proof that there was nothing else.
Back on this repeated reference to reputable scientists in this movie, you can find people of all different walks of life who believe all kinds of different things. But here's a useful statistic, okay? Mm-hmm. The National Academy of Science, which is the organization that the top, premier, most respected, most accomplished scientists in the United States are in, okay? Of the National Academy of Scientists, over 75% are atheists, okay?
Okay.
Now, you can always find a guy here and a guy there who will agree with you from, if you need a scientist that will agree with your position, if you look long enough, you will find one who agrees. That's not terribly significant. What is significant is what conclusion do the vast majority of working scientists, of the top working scientists, reach. Okay. That matters more than who was in this movie that you can't name.
But let's just do a hypothetical.
Okay.
Let's say that 100 years from now, 50 years from now, that wherever that burden of proof rests is definitely proven without a doubt.
Okay.
What happens to the people that didn't believe that because it wasn't proven without a doubt.
I don't know.
Are we talking about, like, say, Christianity, where you have to be a believer to get into heaven?
Because,
Kristen, in order to answer your question, I have to know the context. Can we just say that, right?
What? I'm sorry, what did you...
Can we just make the context Christianity? Then I can answer your question.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So say it's Christianity. So say right now there is a God, and the rule is you have to believe in him in order to get into heaven.
Right.
Right? But there's people like us who have decided that the smart thing to do is play the odds at all times and not believe until the evidence is actually there. Right?
Right.
So we die, and 50 to 100 years from now, it's discovered that the God existed all along and we were wrong.
Right.
Okay. If this entity is really out there, and his rule is, you gotta believe in me without any evidence at all, because that's the rule I set down arbitrarily, and because you didn't, I will burn you in hellfire forever, then he's an evil God.
See, I don't believe that. I believe that whoever doesn't believe is going to have a chance to believe, even if there is no proof right now. When that proof happens, if they've already gone, that person that we might call God at this time is going to say to them, okay, here's your another chance, because he's not going to lose people.
So you're coming up with an ad hoc belief off the top of your head to justify something. Let me finish.
Of what happened
to justify something
I'm not going to get into what happened to me, but I was raised a Catholic, and I got really angry at whatever. I believed there was a higher power. I didn't know what I believed, and something very serious happened to me.
Okay, that's great.
And I got really angry at this identity, whatever
But I'll tell you
and
this.
I said, prove to me that you exist. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't hallucinating, and I'm not going to get into it.
Well, you are getting into it over and over again, and
but I mean, for me, what happened, and it happened 3 times, different things,
must have been God then.
To say to me,
he always works in 3s.
I'm asking you to prove this, and you did. And I was angry when I said it, like, you son of a bitch. Why is this happening to me if you really exist?
Well, I think
prove to me you exist.
In much the same way of things that we've been talking about, for you to come up with an ad hoc hypothesis that basically rationalizes away something about a religion that you disagree, you're essentially putting yourself, for practical purposes, as a new Bible, a new God.
No,
you're making, this is what I happen to believe,
to the Bible,
and therefore...
there's a second judgment, so I'm not...
I'm
it
not,
all depends upon how one wants, and I don't read the Bible that much, but how one wants to interpret what they're reading.
But anyway,
I believe in a God of love. I don't believe in a God of vengeance. I don't believe in a God that's going to hell and damnation.
So then you don't believe in the God of the Bible.
So, and ma'am, I'm going to...
the God of the Bible in some people's minds is a God of love.
Can we get back to your...
It's a hell and damnation person.
Can we get back to your hypothetical?
Yeah.
Okay, so your answer to the hypothetical is, if it turns out in 50 to 100 years that the evidence is there that would have convinced us atheists but we're already dead, right? Your answer to that hypothetical is, it's no big deal, because we'll have been given this extra chance, right?
Correct.
And we already told you, before when you were talking about in 100 years if there's evidence, when there's evidence, we'll accept the evidence.
Right.
So if there was this second chance, we'd accept the second chance because we'd be in a position to have the evidence right in front of us, right?
Right.
So it's no big deal.
Right.
So then I want to ask you, given that that's the way you think things would be,
I think that the second chance is going to be turned down by some people, but if you had a good life,
by us.
Where are we for the 50
life with integrity and honesty and care?
Where do you think we are for the 50 years before we get the answer?
Sorry, where to what?
Where do you think we will be if I die now and in 50 years we have evidence? Where am I for that 50 years?
I have no idea.
She already said
I don't
she thinks
think
God
you
gives
just
you a second
immediately
chance.
go to hell or heaven.
All right, but ma'am, I'm going somewhere with this.
And neither
okay,
does the Bible.
So you believe that if there is a God, that he's the kind of guy who'd give you another chance, who wouldn't set up an arbitrary rule that you get punishment, period, no ifs, ands, or buts, just because you didn't believe in him during life, right?
That's right.
Okay, so I'm asking you, why take this leap to believing in him now? There's no need.
Because of my experience.
But there's no need. Your experience could be wrong. I mean, you are aware that people experience hallucinations.
I wasn't hallucinating.
Well, you know, the person who has the hallucination is least qualified to make that judgment. Now, I don't know about what your situation was, and you don't want to talk about it. That's fine.
After,
my point is, we know for a fact, ma'am. The point is, we know for a fact. Human beings can experience hallucinations. Human beings can see one thing and misinterpret it as something else.
This would have been very hard to do, but go ahead.
My point is, even if it's a tiny, 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 tiny chance that maybe your recollection of these things that happen to you is not quite accurate, right? Just suppose, can you suppose maybe?
Nope.
You can't suppose maybe that you're wrong.
Well, you can't.
So you're closed-minded, ma'am. You're closed-minded.
You can't suppose. I mean, if you're confronted with something and it happens to you and you believe that, I'm not trying to change your opinion. Your opinion is your opinion.
I'm entirely capable of imagining that I might be wrong about pretty much any subject.
Well,
but you can't. You're closed-minded.
I'm not closed.
I'm sorry for you. You are closed-minded.
You're
incapable of imagining that you might be wrong.
Huh?
You're incapable of imagining that you might be wrong.
That is your opinion.
That's what you just said.
I asked you, can you imagine that even a tiny chance...
Okay, let's say I could be wrong.
Okay.
Let's say I could be wrong.
Okay, so, given that you think there's no risk entailed in not believing in God now, doing what we atheists do, declining to believe because we don't think there's sufficient evidence now, you think there is no downside because we'll get another chance later. Yet, you are going ahead and believing this thing for which there isn't evidence beyond what your personal experiences are.
Why do you care what I believe if I personally do not have any argument with what you believe?
Why'd you call, by the way?
I just wondered if you'd seen what the movie was.
Nope.
I don't
my
care.
point is, okay, I'll make my point.
I care about human beings having integrity.
I do too, and that's why I do too, and I'm right there with you. I completely agree. I think human beings should have integrity. I also think human beings should not take risks and believe stuff that there isn't a darn good reason to believe. You might be mistaken, and yet you're going ahead and believing it, even though there's no downside to not believing it.
You might be mistaken too.
Sure, yes. But if I'm mistaken, as you say, there's no downside. I'll get another chance later.
So what difference does it make whether I believe now or believe later?
Well, because right now you might be believing something that isn't true.
When might
clearly,
be believing something that is true.
But clearly, know. But this is a fact, ma'am. It always makes more sense to believe only those things for which there is evidence.
But
that is simply a fact.
It's all a work in progress.
All right. Thanks for your call. Good grief.
Okay. Let's just keep right on moving along. We got
it's apparently a big issue. Did you pick up on Mike already?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Mike, you there?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was still talking. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How y'all doing?
Not bad.
Let me turn my TV down here.
That's a good idea.
I just had a quick question. Do you guys, did any of y'all ever study psychology or know anything about psychology or about the human brain in general?
Him, yes, me, no.
I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but, as a layperson, yeah, I've looked into things like that.
Okay, well, I'm just going to throw out a hypothetical real quick.
Okay.
Let's see how I can put this. For instance, let's say people that do believe in God or Jesus, let's say they know that they don't exist, but for psychological purposes, for the better of the human being, it helps them in everyday purposes. Let's say they know they're not going to go to heaven, but just for everyday purposes, the rules or the criteria in which the Bible talks about just helps them. And I think that's why a lot of people that are in higher corporate positions, and I mean, you guys seem like you're successful, but I mean, you don't believe in God, and you seem to have good evidence and good arguments about why God doesn't exist, but what does that do good for your brain? Let me finish. This is a show where people are calling in, and so you should listen more than talk. Anyway,
don't tell us what to do on our own show, but go ahead.
You talk so much, you don't let anybody speak.
I'm letting you finish, but I don't want you to make 4 points.
I just want to finish it off
so that I can't address any of them.
Entire thing that I'm speaking about here, so I don't forget, because y'all like to intimidate, interrogate, and I think that's kind of wrong.
I see.
But anyway, can I just finish? Let me finish here.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say, people don't believe in God, but they just use it for a psychological advantage.
Yeah.
Rather than y'all believing that it doesn't exist and trying to debunk people, and obviously you seem very sarcastic, even almost like you're angry, or you everything you say. It's the guy I'm talking to, the guy on the left here. But you seem very sarcastic, and like that smile right now.
I'm really tired of some of these arguments, sir.
Is that a genuine smile, or is that sarcasm?
Of the three of us, you sound the angriest
I have studied psychology,
right now.
and what y'all guys are talking about, you have good evidence, but y'all are almost imposing your belief. Because you say you don't believe?
Imposing.
You either believe or you don't believe in God. You guys do not believe. That is a complete belief. That is a belief. You guys want to jump around the bush, but you guys do not believe in God, correct?
Okay, can I answer the question that you were asking?
Go ahead.
You were referring to what if somebody absolutely knows that their belief is wrong, but they hold the belief anyway because it provides them some real benefit.
Right, without imposing on others.
I heard you the first time.
Without imposing on others, okay.
You're on hold. I didn't hang up. I'll take you off hold. Just let me finish. I understood it, and I'm addressing it. They believe this because they feel a benefit from it. And your question seems to be, what's so wrong with that? I'm going to answer you anyway. Your claim seems to be, what's so wrong with that?
You broke it, man.
I broke the phone thingy. The reason there's a problem with that, and this came up in a way in a discussion about rehabilitation of prisoners and using religion for that. And the point seems to be, if my goal is to have a better outcome, have something that feels good, if we know for a fact that religion, let's say, is not true, no matter what you're talking about, and believing it anyway yields a positive effect, then it's incumbent upon us to find out what is it in that belief, what power of positive thinking in the mind, what mindset have we put ourselves in, that is actually causing the benefit, because the benefits clearly is not coming from God. We've already accepted at the beginning of your argument that we don't believe. The same benefit can be derived from a number of different positive thinking type. It's changing somebody's mindset. And would you rather feel a benefit from believing something you know to be a lie, or discover how to feel that benefit based on a truth? And I wish you hadn't hung up, but that's kind of the nutshell way of addressing it. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I got to step in my own defense. Sir. Yes, I am. I present my case strongly, and I do sometimes wind up talking over other people. That is almost always because the other person won't shut up. And when I get a little heated, it's because the other person won't shut up, or the other person is making an argument I've heard 18 gazillion times already, and it's completely bogus, and if I could just get a word in edgewise, I could explain why it's bogus. Or the other person is repeating something they already said that they'd already backed down from, right? Which is like deeply unfair when you have an exchange. So I'm not going to apologize for trying to do a good job defending my position, and I'm certainly not going to take it from a guy who calls in and starts telling us how we should behave on our show, right? I'm not going to take it from you that you are the judge of what is proper behavior. When you call into our show, we have rules. We try to be fair, but we're not going to be dictated to how to operate our own program. That's ridiculous.
If I cut somebody off, it's one of the most common reasons is that it's unfair for somebody to call in and make 4 shotgun claims, 2 of which are probably the same claim in disguise, and not give anyone the chance to respond to them. So when you asked your first question about believing something you know not to be true just because you feel that it's good, it's fair to let me actually respond to that. And if you wouldn't have hung up when we were done with it, we could go on to another point that you made. It's not, I think anybody who watches the show and is objective about it knows that we're not just sitting here hanging up on people and talking over people. You can call in whenever you want.
If you really want to see that, call one of those Christian shows.
Yeah.
We're more fair to people than they are.
We've been accused many times of letting people go on way, way, way too long.
Like with the lady earlier.
Yeah, because I don't like to put people on hold. I don't like to hang up on people in order to be able to speak. But there are people who will call in and just ramble and ramble and ramble on multiple points, and get your own show. Ask a question, provide a claim, let us respond to it. I'd be more than happy to have only one caller for the entirety of the show, as long as it was a good discussion. As soon as it turns into just blah, blah, blah over and over and over again, it's not worth having.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, let's go on to Faye. How you doing, Faye?
Fine.
Hi, Faye.
I just kind of wanted to share with you something because I died, and when I, was ushered into hell, they were getting me ready to go into the bowels. They even announced it, and I said, Jesus is my Savior. Boy, I zapped back in my body. And this doctor, I remember it took him a long time, but he said, you'll never read, write, or talk. I can't shut up. And I understood languages. I knew what people were going to say before they said it. And then I became a pilot in 20 minutes. And my first flight was IFR.
I'm sorry, can you prove, ma'am? Ma'am?
It's the largest military air force for men to learn to fly.
Excuse me, ma'am?
They said it was a miracle I made it in because their pilots couldn't do that.
You became a pilot?
Jesus is my Savior.
Excuse me, ma'am?
And I took it for granted as a child
we
because I wasn't even a baby.
We get a word in edgewise. Can we talk, please?
I can't hardly hear you.
Okay, good. I have one question.
Yeah.
Can you prove any of this?
Well, I got doctors with everybody in my family's died and come back.
Can you prove any of this?
Atheist, and he said, "Hey, Faye." When they told me I'd never move again, and I was at the VA for a year.
Okay.
Some old man put his hand on me and said, "Ask in the name of God."
See, that is exactly what we're talking about. She's going to go on and on and on and on with these wild claims, and when asked if she can prove any of it, she brushes off the request and just goes on making more claims.
And most of it's testimonial claims. Now it's one thing to say that you became a pilot in 20 minutes. That's impressive, and I'd be interested in that, and if you got proof and blah, blah, blah. But to go on and on with testimonial after testimonial, it's not evidence. It is evidence. It's just not reliable evidence. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't demonstrate. And if you're just going to ramble and not have a discussion, we'd rather you just didn't go.
I became a brain surgeon in a fortnight.
You are
See how easy that is
stud.
to just say? That is why we ask for evidence. And that's why evidence is important. Because anybody can say anything.
Yeah, and it's not... I have no problem at all believing that Faye actually believes what she claims to believe. And I have no problem at all believing that our previous callers all believe the things that they claim to believe. That's not the question. People believe a lot of things that aren't really true,
right,
for all kinds of reasons.
The question is there any good reason for anybody else to believe it? And that's why we ask for evidence. Let's move on.
And next we got Ray. How you doing, Ray?
Oh, hey, I'm doing fine.
Hi, Ray.
I just want to address what the caller said earlier. He was talking about the mind and religion. And I saw this one show, it was on PBS a while back. It was Secrets of the Mind. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about how our minds might be, pre-wired towards, learning religion, for believing in, religion and God and stuff, as,
You're referring to something they've termed the God center of the brain? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it was talking about, how we're pre-wired to believing in religion. And I was just wondering what y'all's thoughts on that were.
Apparently not all of us are, because I've never had any of those feelings. But I'm very glad that physical structure in the brain has been discovered, so that if I ever do have one of those feelings, I can go, okay, so I got some neurons firing that are giving me these sensations, and I know that's entirely physical. There's no particular reason to connect that with the actual existence of any supernatural entities.
Yeah, the actual, it's still a fledgling, theory. I mean, we don't know a whole lot about the brain anyway, but identifying the portion of the brain which seems to be most active during claimed religious experiences and calling that the God Center, that's great. But it's still just an identification of something that is natural. It's a way for us to classify something in scientific terms, and if they choose to call this a God Center because it's associated with religious types of experiences, etc., that's still not evidence of a God, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, I have one more question too. I was wondering, like, what does it say? What if it really mattered whether or not people actually chose to believe in God or not? Like, does that really matter if that's the case? You know, does it really make a difference?
Well, it depends what religion you're talking about. I mean, Christians say it makes a huge difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the real question is, when a religion comes along and says, it makes a huge difference how you decide whether the question of whether to believe in our God or not, right? And they tell you what the torture is going to be if you don't believe. The real question is, why should you take their threat seriously in the first place? Right? Now, from the perspective of an atheist, we think it's important in the sense that people shouldn't be believing stuff that isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we think that they're free to believe whatever they want. I would just prefer, I want to believe things that are true.
It's bad policy,
I'd
but
like
sure,
to
they
deal
have
with
the right
people.
to.
Yeah, I'd prefer to deal with people who believe things that are demonstrably true. And I am of a sort of philosophical position that the world would be a better place if everybody believed things that were true. I don't think we're going to get there tomorrow, but
that's one of those hopes and dreams that we atheists have.
Running through the flowers. Do you have anything else for us?
Telling us we don't have any.
I was also wondering, like, what y'all thought of, like, Christian stuff that don't believe, like, in evolution, or, like, they believe, like, dinosaur bones were
What do you think we think of them?
Yeah, I think young Earth creationists and creationists in general who are opposed to evolution vehemently, I think they're just denying.
Yeah, these are people. These are people who will not accept the obvious facts simply because they have decided to believe every single word as written of a book written by some mystics in the Middle East 2,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And what else can I say about that? So, any other questions?
Oh yeah, like, as a Scientologist and all, like, I believe that
who's it?
about, like,
What?
5 million years ago.
Oh, excuse me?
This guy Xenu came here.
Yeah.
And he, like, killed a bunch of aliens.
Who are we talking? Wait a minute.
And
whoa, slow down,
Thetans are the ones that are, like, floating around and causing all of society's ills. You know?
Yeah, you're talking about Scientology. I did a show on it the other day.
He's trying to get hung up on, and you're going to do it too if you keep talking.
No, but I mean, it's true. You have to stop these.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. You must have.
That's not terribly fair to those, those real Xenu believers out there.
Yeah, I actually did a show a couple weeks ago on Scientology, and we talked about Xenu a little bit.
See, God.
Well,
our callers want to make fun of other religions.
That's all right. Let's get on back to Mike real quick. You there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm back. I didn't mean to hang up on you guys, but I'd like to go ahead and try and defend myself on those last remarks that you guys made.
Okay.
If you want to go ahead and say those again. How did y'all feel about what I said about the hypothetical? I'm not saying that I believe in God or don't believe in God. Basically what I'm saying is, for the human mind, knowing that we are very indecisive, very deceptive, why not use maybe some of the rules? They don't have to be all of the rules, but some of the rules of the Bible or Christianity to further your progress.
Okay.
How does that make sense?
If you're talking about, like, some of the morals in the Bible being good things, some of the rules of the Bible being good things,
yeah,
I agree with you.
Okay.
But they're not exclusive to the Bible, and they don't require a God in order to suss it out. Do not murder.
Is that for you to decide for somebody that, let's say, worked their way all the way up through Dell, went to General Dynamics, and is now a part of Homeland Security, which is basically my stepfather's brother, and he completely believes in God. I mean, and it's funny because he's a brilliant guy, and I hear people like y'all talk who seem like average, intelligent people, but when y'all talk about God and how it affects everybody's life, like, people that do believe in God are somehow stupid, somehow don't know what they're talking about, but these are the people that are running you right now. Like, they run your money, they cut your taxes, and you said that there aren't Christians out there. They're running you right now, basically.
Which is one of the reasons why
It is scary, but I mean, it's the truth. And I'm just saying maybe that's why humans, and life decided to go through that spiritual phase because they felt more comfortable, whatever it was. Because obviously we didn't have the techniques of interrogation or whatever we have today when, God and Jesus was all, basically coming up.
Hey, Mike?
And we had to believe in that, right? The human mind had to believe in that. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, when you throw, we were talking with an earlier caller about the God part of the brain, the part of the brain that if you send electrical impulses through it, you can give people a sense of spiritual.
Right. And do you have proof that you don't have that in your brain?
No, all I can report is that if I have one, it's never gone off. That's all I can say. Right. I assume I've got one. I'm a human being.
Well, through the studies, could you say that possibly more than less do have?
I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
Hang on a second. So you were saying, maybe the brains are wired to believe in God and Jesus and stuff because we needed to for what, social reasons?
Well, I think
I'm paraphrasing you, and I'm trying to be fair.
Okay, well, if I can answer that.
Okay.
Well, I think there is a part. Just my belief. I don't know because I don't have the evidence like you like to have so much. I can't tell you indefinitely or definitely that it is, but I do know that from what I've heard and read that there is a part that scientists believe that is completely dedicated to spiritual things. So whatever that was, whatever the evolution process of that was, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'm just saying, for psychological reasons, now, why would someone debunk something that is helping them move along through their survival? Because you don't believe in God or that way, so it's more of survival of the fittest, natural selection. So really, you're going to use whatever it takes to get atop of that 10% or be a part of the elite. Is that not the animal instinct? Is that not the animal competition?
I think here's what your question sounds like.
I'm
trying to be fair, right? From my perspective.
But answer what I said is what I'm saying. You don't believe in God, so you do believe in evolution and natural selection, do you not?
Well,
no?
I'm not a scientist. I will tell you that I think that scientists whose job it is to figure that kind of stuff out probably have the better answer among the answers that are available now.
So, but you do lean more towards natural selection.
Sure.
Okay. So, would you not think that someone that is more along the animal-like tree, wouldn't they use anything that would better themselves, more money, be able to have more women, whatever it is that is so entwined in our brains as animals? Now, if you do believe in God as the creator, then you could argue that and say, we don't have an animal instinct, and we wouldn't use something like God or religion as it pertains to a group. Because religion pertains to a group, to be able to control and to be able to make rules and dumb people, basically. And I'm
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I do think evolution occurred. It does seem to be supported by the evidence, but that's not where I get my my ethics from.
Well, I'm just saying
Why would I?
I'm just commenting on what I'm saying, that you can believe in something to help yourself, but not know. Like, you can know that something doesn't exist, but because you are psychologically tricking yourself almost, like you are helping yourself, better yourself. So if it's not, if you're not losing anything, why would you not take a benefit out of something that's helping you? Just because
I don't think that Christianity helps me.
Huh?
I don't think that Christianity helps me. That basic premise, I reject that.
Okay, an atheist obviously hasn't helped you much either. I mean, from what I can tell. Unless you're very
excuse me, are you insulting me now?
Well, in a way, I know why I am, because you're so mean to other people, and you're trying to debunk me when you know...
All right, bye. Bye, Mike.
Bye, see you later. You know I'm right. Bye-bye.
Yes, we know you're right. Congratulations. You are superior. It's absolutely absurd.
I'll try to respond.
We've got about a minute left.
Okay, may I? Apparently, I'm being mean to Mike just because I don't agree with him that the body of teachings in Christianity are helpful. Now, to be specific, I think there's some good parts and some bad parts, and the good parts aren't terribly unique to Christianity, despite the fact that Christians like to go around proclaiming that they invented them. On the subject of using Christianity as a means of manipulating the people, because I really think Mike's original question was, isn't it okay for the government to go ahead and manipulate people on the basis of Christianity? I say no, because if you don't, because it is not okay to lie to people, even for their own good. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, we're not exactly sure when the show's going to end. If you're atheist or atheist friendly, want to join us for dinner at Shanghai River, feel free to head on over. We'll be there as soon as we finish cleaning up the studio.